Number 10. The CIA only confirmed its existence very recently. Although it was one of the most open secrets in military history for decades that the facility actually existed, even being given network television coverage in 1994 on a special hosted by Larry King, the government was very reluctant to say anything on the matter of Area 51. It wasn't until 2013 that the CIA acknowledged the existence of this experimental facility. The method used to confirm it wasn't to make an official statement or anything obviously public, so much as it was through releasing documents a full 8 years after the Freedom of Information Act laws were enacted. The main points that came to light were that the facility was used for testing planes like the U-2 and A-12 and certain matters related to the Atomic Energy Commission. As we'll see later, this prolonged secrecy had a very horrible impact on people's lives. Number 9. Drone testing. The U-2 spy plane, which the personnel at Area 51 were instrumental in developing, is still in use today. But in 2013, Area 51 was seen testing a new model of completely different sort of military hardware that became public in 2014. In 2011, the Iranian government displayed a captured RQ-170 surveillance drone and quickly began reverse engineering it. This seemed to expedite the creation of a new model drone, so only 2 years later, the RQ-180 model, which was meant to correct some of the issues the previous model had with aerodynamics, was released. It was sleeker, more maneuverable, and had a range of over 1,200 miles while being able to stay aloft for 24 hours, compared to the previous model's 6-hour maximum. Not a bad contribution to the USAF for a site that was reported as being abandoned in 1997 by Popular Mechanics magazine. Number 8. Boyd Bushman's confession video. In 2014, the internet was briefly rocked by a video of Boyd Bushman shot 2 months earlier before his death, where he claimed to have interacted with extraterrestrial beings and to have been involved in implementing their anti-gravity technology at Area 51. The specifics of his outlandish claims included that there were essentially Wrangler and Rustler aliens that he interacted with, and that they could travel between Earth and their home planet in only 45 minutes. On paper, Bushman did not seem like the sort to engage in crank conspiracy theories. He had worked as an aeronautical engineer for Lockheed Martin for 40 years, and his 25 patents, mostly owned by the same company, included developing laser-guided smart bomb systems. But as news outlets like Snopes were quick to point out, he did not provide any information about how the anti-gravity technology was supposed to work, which as an engineer who'd been part of the project would be presumably well within his abilities. Also, a purported alien in a photo was quickly identified as a doll that was available at Walmart. Number 7. Mine fight. Few families have been as directly affected by Area 51 and the operations that took place in it as the Sheehan family. In 1880, they purchased mining rights for an area 3 miles from the testing runway of Area 51. Practically as soon as the base opened, they started getting trouble from it. Over the years, the family claimed that rounds were fired by planes flying over their home in an attempt to get them to leave. Members further claimed to have been held at gunpoint on their property. In 1954, they filed a lawsuit against the base when they claimed their mill, previously rendered unusable by nuclear testing, was firebombed by the Air Force, dropping the suit only when they ran out of money. Eventually, the family was offered $5.2 million for government expansion, which they refused to accept. In October, the 400 acres of land was simply seized after the offer expired, and the USAF sued them, meaning that the Sheehans have received nothing for their trouble. Number 6. Paradise Ranch. A lot of people think of members of the scientific community as being willing to go anywhere or do anything in the name of following an order. Apparently, though, according to radar tester Edward Lovick, who worked at the base for 3 decades, one of the senior aircraft designers felt a need to try to entice scientists and personnel with the deceptive name. So Clarence Johnson originally dubbed the Area 51 location Paradise Ranch, in the hope it sounded more appealing than calling it Groom Lake or anything that more accurately reflected what a dry, uncomfortable place it was. There's something ominous about naming a location used for testing weapons, especially nuclear weapons, a paradise. Number 5. Moon landing tests. One of the many conspiracy theories surrounding Area 51 is that it is the place where the supposedly fake 1969 Apollo 11 moon landing was filmed. Although the claim that the moon landing was staged at all has been thoroughly debunked, it does hit close to the mark. Sort of. The Area 51 facility itself did not have anything to do with the landing, but at a nearby base that was part of the Nellis Range complex, equipment that NASA used for the moon landing was developed and tested. Probably the best known piece of equipment was the Lunar Rover. It's almost as if Area 51 decided it couldn't get enough intrigue and decided to steal some of its neighbors.
The obsession with Area 51 began in early July 1947. A New Mexico rancher found a bizarre wreckage of scrap metal outside his home and reported it to the local authorities. But within hours, the strange sighting had earned the attention of high-ranking government officials, and the find was quickly confiscated. The next day, the United States Army put out an official statement revealing the wreckage to be a crashed weather balloon. It was around this time that the US were running an operation known as Project Mogul, a state initiative founded to basically keep tabs on communist Russia. These supposed weather balloons were genuine bits of high-tech kit, equipped with long-distance microphones that could reportedly detect sound waves created by Soviet Union atomic bomb tests. The project apparently ended in 1949, but for some, the Roswell incident was a little too suspicious to just unquestionably take the government's word for it. It wasn't long before the public began creating theories that Roswell wasn't weather balloons but was instead a top-secret base where autopsies were performed on mysterious spacemen and alien spacecraft were tested. Of course, the media picked up on these ideas as well, and there followed dozens of movies and television shows entertaining, terrifying, and convincing audiences that intergalactic life forms really had landed in their country. So let's explore that notion first. What would happen if Area 51 was completely declassified and it really was a state-sponsored alien research hub complete with little green men, colossal insectoids, and/or super-intelligent blobs of goop? What if Area 51 really was aliens? Well, if the US had truly been experimenting on alien anatomy for the past 70 years, we'd likely have hundreds, possibly thousands of files including autopsy reports, audio recordings from past experiments, and actual 100% genuine video evidence, as well as, theoretically, a lab full of live alien beings. The everyday person would go from living in a world with no verifiable proof that aliens exist to suddenly having it all there in front of them, so public reaction would be difficult to predict. On the one hand, we could well see panic break out. The knowledge that we're not alone in the universe would, after all, change our fundamental appreciation of life, but it could also prove surprisingly easy for modern society to accept the revelation. Thanks to countless sci-fi movies, TV, literature, and video games, we've in many ways already desensitized ourselves to the idea of other life forms existing. That's not to say we wouldn't have cause for concern, though. Questions would remain about whether other alien planets knew as much about us as we apparently did about them. Plus, the revelation that America had been housing such a secret would seriously threaten all existing diplomatic ties between the US and everyone else. As for the conspiracy theorists who had long since claimed that Area 51 was hiding aliens, they'd suddenly find themselves as one of the world's few trusted voices. And so even if we could accept, given contemporary scientific thought, that extraterrestrials had always been here, if Area 51 really was declassified as an alien research lab, we'd still see massive societal change. But of course, not every Area 51 theory says that the site is housing the bodies of Martian invaders. So what else could it be? Some have linked it to the moon landing, arguing that it's actually the location where the Apollo 11 missions were filmed and hoaxed. NASA and much of the scientific world has disproved these claims time and time again, though. Other, less lofty explanations have billed the no-go zone as simply a top-secret military base where the US forces develop weapons and strategies without anyone else knowing what they're up to. There's no denying that Area 51 maintains extremely high security. No one's allowed in or out, and trespassers risk a massive fine or even jail time. Even the president couldn't spill the beans because allegedly even they don't completely know what goes on in there. The only president known to be strongly involved with Area 51's activity was Dwight D. Eisenhower, who approved at least one of the projects during his presidency. By contrast, Bill Clinton reportedly tried digging up files on aliens but found nothing. So most American leaders couldn't tell you about Area 51 besides what's already been declassified. That Eisenhower project probably gives us our most reliable insight, though. In the mid-1950s, President Eisenhower gave his approval for the CIA to use Area 51 as a testing site for their latest aircraft, the Lockheed U-2. A state-of-the-art machine, it was to help the US government spy on the Soviet Union and take photographs without being detected. According to documents declassified by the CIA in 2011, another aircraft dubbed the Archangel 12 was also built after the U-2. And future aircraft projects at the site would pave the way for the Lockheed F-117 Nighthawk and the Lockheed Martin RQ-170 Sentinel, both specifically built for espionage. So it does seem most likely that Area 51 simply isn't the alien museum many dream it could be. So far, most declassified documents have shown that it operates as a testing site for United States spy tactics. The facility's expansion in 2016 further supports this theory. Eagle-eyed users of Google Earth found that more hangars and airstrips had been built within the parameters, most likely to increase production of the latest tech. The expansion is reportedly used by both the Department of Defense and Homeland Security, with some speculation that the site is now linked to sophisticated drone production as well as aircraft. With that in mind, Area 51 may not be hiding anything so unusual from us. But even if its official use was ever declassified, it'd no doubt still be a source of speculation. Since the infamous Roswell incident, we've steadily learned a lot more about Area 51, and instead of aliens and UFOs, documents have described tests for stealth planes and weather balloons. Maybe that's all there is, but it'll always encourage us to wonder, what if? And that's what would happen if Area 51 was declassified.